Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Bytes Azure Hybrid Cloud webinar this morning. It's Emma Hunt here. I am a data center specialist here working for Bytes. And I just wanted to start really by introducing Bytes to you as a value-added partner for your Azure and cloud strategy. So let's start off then. Bytes help define your software strategy really and broker your IT spend as a dedicated software portfolio management partner. We offer a leading software advisory service and that encompasses all aspects of software asset management, licensing consultancy, hybrid and cloud solutions and services. We've been around for about 33 years. Over this time we've got a proven track record of vendor experience. We're Microsoft's largest partner in the UK with over sort of $250 million in sales as a whole. We manage more enterprise agreements than any other partner, and we have over 154 Microsoft certified professional exams in software licensing and software asset management with more than 70 licensing professionals. Our heritage really is licensing and cloud expertise, hence this webinar today. So we want to introduce that cloud message to you, and it really sets us apart from the competition. Our industry-leading performance is really underpinned by our role as the leading Microsoft cloud provider. We actually manage and transact more Office 365 and Azure services than any other partner in the UK. 20% of Office 365 and Microsoft managed accounts in the UK are delivered by Bytes, and we deliver about 35% of Azure services, which makes up around £40 million last year. From a value proposition point of view, we have a host of awards that recognise our cloud and operational efficiency as well as growth with strategic partners such as NetApp, who we have on the call with us today. I should have said in the beginning actually, there are questions and answers at the end, so if you do have questions as we go along, I'm going to introduce Kirk in a second, then feel free to sort of stay on afterwards. But if you do have any questions in the meantime, there is a question box that you can type in your questions and answers. And yeah, I think with that we'll pass over to Kirk. Are you there, Kirk?
Yes, thanks very much, Emma. And hello and good morning to everybody on the webcast. My name's Kirk Ryan. I'm a technical solutions architect and I work for NetApp UK. And I primarily deal with everything Microsoft and everything cloud related as well, having spent 5 years at NetApp and previously 7 years as a customer myself. So I've got a lot of first-hand knowledge of how to pull this stuff together. Really what I want to present to you today is, first and foremost, is a very brief run-through of cloud economics, the lean cloud strategy. If you're under the perception of moving to cloud and saving money immediately, then this is the reality check of how, where the pitfalls are, where working with many customers over the years, how you can really sort of expose the value of cloud within your business. Secondly, I want to run through some of the things that we have in our portfolio that help realize this, and first and foremost would be OnTap Cloud for Azure, which is the idea of NetApp storage systems don't actually have to be physical, they can be virtualized, and that includes running in the cloud as well, and the reasons for doing so. Third, I'd like to run through a new offering from NetApp that many of you wouldn't have heard about. We announced it at Insight this year, which is our technical conference that we run. It's the announcement of Plow Control, which is that we see a lot of customers moving to Office 365, and there is an opportunity there, or a challenge really, for customers around backup strategy for Office 365. And then finally, I wanted to take the opportunity to put an argument I have on a daily basis with anybody looking to consume Azure services as to Azure Pack, Azure Stack, and what your strategy should be around this, and that aligns with the recent announcements from Microsoft Ignite this year. So moving on to cloud economics and this concept of lean cloud. So how can you use the cloud, so services like Azure, to actually realize business value to the business? And I want to open up first and foremost with a controversial brief discussion about the definition of cloud. And really it's very simple. The cloud is fundamentally first and foremost about making money. It's about creating new incremental business value, and we can see this by Microsoft, Google and Amazon. All three of them, if you look at their quarterly results, they're very margin rich in these areas as a result of their cloud offerings. So we take this one step further by one of our C-level execs would actually say that if you're not using cloud today for suitable workloads, you're actually committing professional malpractice. And why would he say this? Because you're allowing your competitors a huge advantage for unpredictable workloads versus your own offerings. And it's this word unpredictable workloads which really exposes the value of the cloud. So another way of illustrating this quickly is if we look at this, this figure here, this is the cost of cloud price index specification over time. And many people will think of cloud and start thinking of 1 cent, 2 cents or 3 cents per gigabyte, and those are the only costs, and I'm going to realize some cost savings just by moving my servers from my on-premise to the cloud. The reality is very different somewhat though, because this blue bar, which is the cost that most customers would think of when moving to the cloud, actually represents only 3% of the services offered by those cloud providers, and they tend to be the commodity pieces, which actually, you know, if you think of just storage on itself, so no replication, no backup, no availability or anything like that, just a standard storage offering from a hyperscaler, or the discounted commodity compute as well. These are the services that actually represent the least value to development and analytics services within the business. Those services, if you want to do any analytics or create business value, are actually represented by the orange bar here, which are typically the least discounted there. And that allows them to operate at high profit margins, and clearly looking at their financial results is working. So what's the key takeaway here? Unless you're very careful, cloud is not a very cost-effective alternative to traditional IT. And I've seen this with many customers from varying sizes, all the way from some of the biggest companies you can think of right down to 50 to 100 seat users. Another way of looking at this quickly as well is just to define the challenge here. Is if we take the figures from IDC, they simply asked, and it is Amazon that they asked here, has your company or organization moved the compute that you put out into the cloud back on premise or to another service provider within the last 12 months? And 51.6% of those respondents said yes. Now, I've seen some storage companies quote this incorrectly, because that's not a bad thing. What that tells us is that the life cycle of the data, you know, the key value of when it's unpredictable, it should sit in the cloud. So if you're starting a new project, if you're starting a new way of doing things and testing that out, many times at ground level, your developers won't even know the answer to the questions of how much RAM do I need, how many CPUs, how many instances do I need, how does it scale with my user base, when will it break? And that's where cloud is very, very good because of the elasticity of the cloud. However, once your workload starts to become predictable, in many cases you're paying a tax for having that the availability of being able to scale up and scale down. So what happens there when you've got things like operations monitoring, when you've got things like automation in place, it becomes a predictable cost. And at that point as well, sort of the next question here where they said, well, you know, have you moved it back to on-premise or another provider? What were the reasons? You can look at there, it's actually mainly driven by commercial decisions. So the two of the main ones there were commercial, which is ironic because we've got this concept of cloud is cheap. So the reality is, you know, and I've done this myself, I've moved large demo estates into the cloud. However, there are lots of other charges there, data egress charges, for example, for pulling your data back. So if you create any value in the cloud, you will get charged for bringing that back as well. So just to sort of put the landscape out there of cloud and being able to understand the cloud economics is very important as to the pretense of these solutions that I'm going to present. So the first one I wanted to run through here is OnTap Cloud for Azure. And really what we're talking about here is bringing enterprise class features directly to the native storage of that cloud provider. So what does that mean? If I look at Azure, for example, I've got the choice of premium or standard storage, which is SSD or hard disk drive. Now, I'm faced with all the challenges that I had before I put an array into the site, before I centralized, because even though I'm consuming cloud services, each one of, let's say, my DBA or my application developer, if they're specifying that they want a machine, I need to start calculating how many disks do they need, how many IOPS are available, what's the capacity, and I'm back to creating a lot of siloed machines across the cloud. So what we do here is we actually aggregate all of those disks together into a large storage pool that's easily manageable, but more importantly, you can replicate your data back out and into the cloud in a very efficient manner, and one that's been proven over many years using the NetApp replication technology that we have there. The other thing as well is we're able to bring some storage efficiencies into play, so things like compression and deduplication are there to minimize the footprints of your data sets, but more importantly, and this is probably the biggest thing for this product, is that if you have any development workflow where you need to provision more than one copy of your data, that using OnTap Cloud for Azure, you can create rapid clones of your data that consume no additional space whatsoever. So let's take, for example, a 1 terabyte file, could be a database file, for example, and I want to give 50 copies of that to my developers, so each developer has their own copy. I can provision those additional 49 copies instantaneously and at zero cost to myself. Now the ongoing cost is whatever they change of that data set, but instantly I've realized that I've not had to create 49 copies of that data and incur the costs of storage and capacity, but also the time taken to do it, because it is a copy operation if you do it traditionally. Using the OnTap cloud system, you can create instant clones that are zero cost in terms of the capacity as well. And also another thing to bear in mind here as well is that you may be aware that the NetApp systems are multi-protocol, so I've taken my pool of premium or standard disks and I'm able to present things like iSCSI, SMB, or some people call it CIFS, or even NFS services directly from that same group of disks simultaneously. So that's another point to bring in mind here. So I've really improved my operations and also allowed more feature set to be on, a great feature set to be on the native disk than Amazon or Azure are allowed to do themselves. Now, this may sound great, so you think, right, OnTap Cloud, how do I consume it then? It's very simple. You can consume it directly from the marketplace. If you go to the Azure Marketplace, type in NetApp, it's there. And this is typically if you want to give it a proof of concept or a test drive or even smaller data sets. And you can see I'm not going to run through the whole thing here. This will be made available afterwards. But for the larger data sets, so upwards of 31 terabytes, then the cheapest option we find actually is to bring your own license, and it's through speaking to partners like Bytes that you'd be able to get a quotation and purchase a bring your own license to have those cost savings for the larger instances of Cloud for Azure. Now you may be thinking, this sounds great, but how do I manage it? Very simple. We have a very good team out in Israel who went and designed what's called OnCommand Cloud Manager, and this is deployed directly into your Azure instances, and this will automatically deploy the OnTap Cloud. It will map it to your required VPC, so it deals with all the networking in the Azure piece, and it will also tie into the pricing APIs that Azure provide themselves. So not only can we provision and do the mapping and networking that you require to get this instance up and running and also visible from the rest of your virtual machines or instances there, but it also does the cost monitoring for you as well. So you can see how much storage am I consuming right now and how much, more importantly, is it costing me. It's very easy to use, so you don't need to think of this as I need to be a storage admin to use this. This is very much thinking of it in the conceptualized view of a service catalog. Give me some storage, I would like it to go so fast, and I would like so much capacity, and that's it. Very, very simple to use. More importantly as well, with the announcement that Microsoft have built data centers on mainland UK, you may want to think about actually having storage that's connected directly to the cloud as opposed to using their own storage. This will also monitor and configure any physical NetApp hardware that you may have and connect it directly to the cloud provider as well, so that you own your data sovereignty and the data resides on those systems as opposed to being in the cloud. And that gives you a big advantage of never having to migrate in or out of the cloud as well. You can quickly present to any cloud provider if you use that sort of configuration. So let's start with a quick demonstration of how we can run this. Cloud Manager is used to deploy your cloud instances. You'd log in using your credentials. This is running directly in Azure. And you'll see, as I've logged in, there's no working environment, so I'm going to add one. Obviously, it's not just Azure. This will also do AWS. We do have demonstrations of Azure replicating to AWS and vice versa. We also have demonstrations of local sites replicating to either of those so that we can have automatic failover between all of those. The other thing I'm doing here is I'm just giving it some basic details. So what would I like to call the environment? This could be as simple as production, development, UAT. Give it a password, and more importantly, how do you want to keep your data safe? So you can keep it unencrypted, or we can actually plug in and make use of the Azure encryption there. You'd pick a region. So for us, when I created this demonstration, we only have it set up in East US. Because that's the only data center we've got on our account from Microsoft. Yourselves, it would be any region that you have available to your account. And you can see here I've picked a network that allows me to replicate from Azure to AWS and vice versa. And then I'm just going through the simple networking, so what subnets are going to sit on, what security group am I going to use, and yes, I verified that when I provision this cloud management server, it can see that VNet. The other thing to bear in mind here is that you can pick multiple versions of the product. So if there is a specific code line that you've had put through CAB, then you can make sure that when you deploy it's always on that version until the next review. Then you pick your license here, and it's varying capacities of OnTap clouds. You can change on the fly as well between these licenses. So you may start small and grow big. Of course, being an enterprise offering, you'd like to know if anything goes wrong. You can plug it directly into our support site, and it will form part of our auto support functionality. In terms of the disk, so Azure, I get to choose from their premium storage or standard storage, and also what disk sizes would I like it to use. I can also pick the right behavior for it as well. Obviously, one thing that's not in a cloud instance, because it's not an engineered piece of hardware, is a battery backed part of NVRAM for caching. So you have the choice there of being able to use the memory that's on board the virtual machine to speed up any write-intensive workloads. Now, this is the part where I can create my containers for my storage. So I'm going to say I would like an NFS volume that's got 10 gigabytes of space. I would like it to have some snapshots as well. So these are your point-in-time restore capability. Bear in mind that these are not available in Azure natively. So they have, both Azure, AWS, Google, any of those cloud providers provides a strategy of high availability. It is not a backup and restore. It's a highly available infrastructure. So when we start looking at what SLAs they put out, they usually typically publish a 3 nines SLA for availability and 11 nines for durability. And what that really means when you look past the figures and the PowerPoint is that Microsoft are basically guaranteeing that if one of their data centers goes offline, they are not going to lose your data. But it does leave an interesting challenge as to, well, you're still ultimately responsible for your data. What happens if you lose your data? And by you, I mean a user error, a corruption, a synchronization error, and we've seen this over the years as to how this can happen. So that leads me nicely into my next section, a new offering from NetApp called Plow Control. Now this is interesting because this is probably the first time me wearing a NetApp badge I've been able to say here's a product that you don't need to buy any NetApp for. This is a software product as a service, and its intention is to back up Office 365. So much like I've spent the last 5 years working with varying degrees of enterprise in how they're going to enforce and adapt their backup and restore SLAs for the business, and some I've had things that they've got to maintain things for 7 years for compliance reasons. Some are keeping things indefinitely because nobody has the responsibility to say yes, we'll delete it after so long. And I've got on the other side, I work with companies that 3 months they delete everything. They're not interested anymore. So this product here actually lends itself pretty well to that. So very quickly, Office 365, I'm sure everyone here knows roughly what it is. It's highly scalable Office as a service effectively. So we've got things like the actual word processors and Office Suite. We've got OneDrive for Business for File. We've got collaboration in terms of SharePoint, and also communication in terms of Link Online or Skype Online, and Exchange for messaging. Now, what we do though is that's all brought under one enterprise license. It's very efficient. I've seen for the first time customers who are able to give every single user of theirs a 1 terabyte mailbox, for example. That wasn't previously possible. And it's very easy. They don't have to worry about the management or the size of it, which is good. But there are some business continuity challenges here, because when you start looking at Office 365 protection, we break it down into 3 key figures here, and that's data recovery, data retention, and security. So things get to be a bit of a grey area here, because the data recovery, there are offerings. So I'm going to run through what those offerings are from Office 365, potentially where the product here can help to alleviate some of those challenges as well. The other thing as well is that who has access to your sensitive data on the cloud and how that's shared can also be quite a hard one to be able to enforce and show compliance. So with any software as a service comes some shared responsibility. In the case of Office 365, Microsoft is obviously responsible for the core infrastructure security. That includes things like your storage, your networking, application and compute. Now when we look at the other part, so the IT team, that's responsible for your data. So that's things like accidental deletion, viruses or malware, hackers, or even insider threat. And again, I've seen a variety of different ones of these. Most recently last week I was dealing with a customer who had been crypto-locked, and I mean they were crypto-locked at 10 in the morning, and by 10:30 they'd sent the entire staff home because they had to shut it all down. So again, this is one of the things that we have to look at here. The other thing as well is, what do Microsoft actually say? Look, it's your data. You own your data. You retain all rights and interest in the data you store with Office 365. And that's that particular link there. But it also means you have to share the responsibility for your data as well. So when we look at the possibilities, again, ransomware, end purges, this is the simplest one. You know, it's magically disappeared. Most of the time, you know, they've deleted it by accident, or it's gone to a different folder somewhere and they just can't find it. There are the things that now we've got centralized clouds, you can get synchronization issues as well. Simple things like human error. Misconfigured policies by an admin could end up with things being deleted earlier than they should have, and also obviously the risk of insider threat as well. Now when we look at what do we have in terms of the methods provided to actually alleviate these issues, let's look at Exchange. Microsoft have no built-in backup capability for Exchange. It's protected by a highly available strategy. So the idea here is that, okay, if you lose one, yes, we realize that's a risk. So we're going to keep 4 database copies spread across 2 data centers. So if there's any loss of availability, we will bring Exchange back online very quickly. In fact, it will fail over seamlessly at the application layer, that's fine. What about single items? Well, your deleted items are retained for 14 days by default. You can configure it to unlimited, but it does get very costly because you're paying for that live storage. And what about the actual deleted items that are outside of the user area? Then these are another 14 days, and the administrator can configure this to a maximum of 30 days. There are archival and hold options, but again, it's not a backup capability here. What happens if Office 365 goes offline? And one of the key challenges that we've seen here as well is that you'll be continually paying for somebody's seat. So let's say, for example, Kirk at NetApp.com. I'm on Office 365, but I decide to leave the company. And the compliance says there that they've got to keep my mailbox for so many years. Are they going to continue paying for that user seat just for all my staff that have ever left? Or would it be more cost effective for me to be able to take a final backup when somebody leaves? More importantly, have some APIs that tie into the policy for deprovisioning a user. And also in the simplest format would be that if I was to leave and they invoke the leaver process, it would automatically create a PST file of my emails and store that in the most cost-effective region for me. So when we look at how are the items kept in Exchange Online, if we look at an inbox, the user deletes the inbox themselves, it goes to their deleted items, that's fine. If the user clears the deleted items, which are kept for 14 days by default, can be configured for unlimited, but again, just be aware of the cost implications. Then there is a recovery that the administrators can do. The items in this recovery bin are typically kept for 14 days, can be configured to a maximum of 30 days. After that, that item is gone. So that's the workflow of Exchange Online. When we look at SharePoint or OneDrive for Business, a backup happens once every 12 hours. It includes your OneDrive for Business, and it's kept for 14 days. There's no possibility of restoring it after those 14 days. And the restoration is only at the site collection level. So you will have to restore a full site if anything happened on your collaboration platform. The recycle bins are great. 2 stages again, can be kept for 93 days each. There is version control and preservation policies there as well. But let's look at NetApp Cloud Control for Office 365. And this has got a lot of interest since we announced it at Insight this year. Cloud Control is deployed natively in the cloud. You don't even need a server for this. You don't need any on-premise infrastructure. You don't need a NetApp branded piece of hardware anywhere in your infrastructure. So this means for the first time a non-NetApp customer can go and deploy an Office 365 backup from NetApp without any tie-in to our hardware. Of course, at the other end of this, the data secures your data by performing automatic daily backups of your email, your calendars, your contacts, tasks, your files, and everything else in OneDrive for Business as well. It simplifies that data protection, and it provides the monitoring as well. It can also back up and restore entire SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and Exchange Online instances. And that includes the backup of site collections, sites, lists, mailboxes, and item level recovery for all of your SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and Exchange Online components. So we're taking this to a very granular level. So how's it deployed? It supports cloud and hybrid. The target here, you can see, can be NetApp. Of course it will. We're a storage company, so if you've already got an investment with us, we can use that as an endpoint, whether that's a NetApp FAS, whether that's an AltaVault, which has just last week won the Cloud Backup Appliance of the Year award, whether it's our object storage or even native cloud storage. So for example, this could back up directly to an Azure Blob Store, for example, or perhaps you may be thinking, well, if I'm doing a backup of Office 365, it would make more sense that I actually back up to another cloud provider. So in the first instance there, we're looking at Amazon themselves. So you could back up all your AWS instances directly into Amazon. It also gives you, if you're looking at moving to Office 365, it fills the box for what's my exit strategy. You know, I've just finished a project with another customer that's taken 18 months for them to migrate 98%, which is 468 servers directly into Azure, 18 months. And right at the start of the project, we said, what's your exit strategy? It said, it's not part of this phase. It will come after we're in there. We'll think about that afterwards. We're now working on the project with them as to how do they get out of the cloud. Because you can imagine 18 months to move in, they need to be able to move out within 90 days, because if they invoke leaving the cloud provider, they have 90 days to do so before all their data is deleted, or they have to carry on paying for a service. The other thing here as well is archive length and the granularity. As I mentioned earlier, it will do files, folders, items, and mailboxes too. So how's it deployed? The backup for Office 365, so Cloud Control is deployed as a service in the cloud, and it uses APIs to plug directly into Office 365. Any communication that happens between the backup service and Office 365 is encrypted in flight, and no data is actually stored in that middle instance there, the NetApp piece, and this is the service. Now, obviously, it can go back to a local data center, and this would make sense for anybody that's got these pieces available. But more importantly, it can also go directly to a cloud-connected piece of storage, Amazon S3 bucket. Remember OnTap Cloud, which I just mentioned before this section, so it can go to a virtual cloud-based OnTap, and also to our Alta Vault as well, which will back it up to any other cloud provider at the back end. And it does so in a very space-efficient manner, and that's a virtualized Alta Vault as well. So we do have a physical product, but we have a virtual product as well. So very quickly, what does it do? It streamlines your transition to Office 365. It controls the data. More importantly, it allows you to actually back up and provide archiving for your deployment, and sort of gets you out of that vendor locking. You have a strategic offering here that's able to not have a Microsoft badge on it that can back up, restore, and give you the flexibility to restore natively to any other Exchange estate. So you may, in future, decide to move out of the cloud provider to somebody that's just running Exchange services on your behalf. This would enable you to do that and restore to that estate very quickly. And more importantly, it simplifies the administration as well. There's a great portal which you're able to see, and I'll give you the link afterwards, where you can take this for a test drive and see the videos for it. So last but not least, the hybrid Azure cloud solutions themselves, and this is a conversation I've enjoyed having a lot, Azure Pack versus Azure Stack. And I'd say if you're actually saying Azure Stack versus Azure Pack, it's incorrect. This was correct maybe up until about 6 months ago, but Microsoft announced at Ignite this year that this is no longer the case. At Ignite 2015, Microsoft announced Azure Stack. It was a solution that would enable customers to host your own private cloud within your own data center. That's great. I've got Azure in my own data center. Fantastic. And it would be a seamless operation of hybrid cloud services for all of my customer workloads. However, that resulted in a lot of confusion because service providers and other customers already have a large investment in Azure Pack, or WAP, and customers' investments in System Center as well. More importantly, from the skills and knowledge of their teams, they've got a lot of resources available for System Centers. So Microsoft Ignite announced a new strategy. Azure Stack will no longer be positioned as the replacement for Azure Pack, quite the opposite. Microsoft have learned the hard way that the same limitations for customers' migrations to Azure, as in a forklift upgrade to Azure, exists if you're using Azure Stack as well. And there's also currently a lack of backup and enterprise features, making it unsuitable for any enterprise mode 2 or traditional enterprise applications. So with this in mind, a new strategy of integration was demonstrated, which is Azure Stack will import and manage all existing Azure Pack workflows, and the two will coexist together. They reiterated this ongoing support and development for Azure Pack for the future, which puts us in a good place now because we now understand how this is laid out. So when we look at Azure Stack, Azure Stack in your actual data center itself, it is geared towards cloud applications, mode 2 applications, and interestingly, this represents only 5% of all customer deployed workloads today. It is a transformation effort, it's licensed pay-as-you-go, and it's targeted at the enterprise. If you are a service provider, be aware that there isn't currently a service provider strategy for this. So if I was, for example, service provider A competing against service provider B, there would be no differentiation between our two Azure stacks, which means I'm in a race to the bottom on price, and that's not a great place to be. Currently as well, it's over a year late. They're tracking our July next year release. When we look at Azure Pack, this is the offering for hybrid cloud. It targets Mode 1 applications, which represent 95% of customer deployed workloads today, built-in onboard servicing, and has a proven track record already today. It's sold today. Service providers can differentiate and compete on value-added services, but more importantly for us, we took a bet early on that we saw this coming. NetApp are the only storage vendor with any Azure Pack integration out of the box. So if you want provisioning as a service, backup as a service, cloning as a service, onboarding, offboarding, we have already built it and it's available for you to install directly to your estate. And why? Because we've seen, whether you're a service provider or not, there's a big move from traditional hosting in terms of give me a LUN, give me a storage area, and that sort of workflow, to basically a service catalog where, whether you're a small IT house or a much larger estate, these are the four things that are pretty much top of mind for any company that's got IT services. And that's self-service tools, dynamic resource allocation capability, APIs, and offering it as a service. So with that, that brings me to a close, and there's a lot of information there, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kirk. We've actually got some questions already, so if you do have any questions, if you just pop those in the questions box, which is just to the right-hand side of your screen, I will read those out for Kirk and Emma. So the first question we have here says, is it possible to move data sets between Azure and AWS to take advantage of pricing? And if it is, how easy is it to do so?
Okay. So absolutely, that's really where this this product excels, is basically decoupling the data from the virtual machine itself. When you're looking at cloud, you want your data to be decoupled from the VM itself. So what we do is we've got native replication built into the product that will allow you to either replicate on a constant ongoing basis, or a big bang sort of approach if you wanted to do that, but do it very efficiently with the storage efficiencies maintained between those instances. So we have a great example of somebody running a SQL box with the database split between AWS and Azure, and we actually demonstrate an outage of one of those providers as well. So we're able to do that. And one thing I haven't been able to put, Emma, if you could put in the chat for everyone, is it's netapp.com/cloud. And that's all the instances and everything I've talked about are available there. And we do a 30-day test drive of all the products that I've spoken about today. So you can just bring your Azure or AWS credentials, and we will take you on a test drive of the product and allow you to even connect your own data sets to it to give it a real good proof of concept.
Thanks, Kirk. So there's another question here. It says, are there any metrics that can be used ahead of time to right-size the VM size, and in brackets CPU, RAM, before deployment?
Yes, yeah, there are. I think that Microsoft will help you, Bytes will help you, certainly. I've been involved in many with Bytes, so it's probably the best one to work with your partner Bytes on this one. And we run through a joint sizing exercise for those VMs. In terms of sizing the virtual machines for the OnTap instances, we have white papers available to show what the performance is of each of those instance sizes, so that you can pick the one most appropriate for your business requirements or application requirements.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. And there's another question here. It says, oh, it's from Richard as well, the same person from the question before. He said, additionally, will Azure support, is that supposed to say, so NetApp, is that cloud HA, does that say? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So What Richard's referring to there is that AWS, our OnTap cloud for AWS supports what's called a highly available instance. So we have two Cloud OnTap instances that are able to fail over seamlessly between one another, almost like a metro cluster for cloud, effectively. And we're using the same technology, effectively. We're using synchronous mirroring under the covers. So it's not there for Azure today, so well spotted. It is being looked at in future. We can discuss more under an NDA as to what that roadmap would particularly look like, and quite happy to do that.
Brilliant, thank you, Kirk. So we've got another question here. This is from Ryan. Could you fail over between a cloud NetApp and a physical NetApp?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no difference to failing over between a cloud to physical to physical, or a cloud to cloud. It is OnTap, and this is the real call out here, is the OnTap code that exists in Azure, AWS, or our physical kit, or whether you're running it on white box kit with OnTap Select, is exactly the same. So the failover, very simple, and absolutely, yeah, you can automate this and have a red button approach if you wanted to do this.
Brilliant, thank you, Kirk. So I think that's all the questions we have today. So Kirk, thank you so much for presenting today, and Emma, thank you. Are you still there, Emma? I think she is. She might be on mute. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for the webinar today. There is a kind of just a really short feedback form at the end. So if you would like any more information or a call back from Bytes or NetApp, if you just pop that in there, one of our specialists will be in touch with you. So thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.